Thank you. All right, hello everybody. I'm glad you're here today. My name is Raquel Reinagel. You might have seen my face as well somewhere on the internet as Rocky. So I'm, as Kanat said, I'm a teacher here for Nazarbayev University in the Center for Preparatory Studies in the foundation year program. I'm a senior teaching fellow, so I teach English, of course, and I also technology work for our program. But today I'm going to talk about learning languages, of course. Now, I think everyone attending actually is probably multilingual already, knows more than one language. Many people in Kazakhstan grow up learning and knowing more than one language. So you have an advantage over me. When I grew up, my family only spoke English. So I had to start learning a new language in high school, which is a little bit later than all of you probably. But I do want to start a presentation, a little PowerPoint that I have to kind of just explain a little bit about myself, and then we'll move into language learning as well. So let me just try to share my screen here. All right, I think you can see the screen. Kana, is that correct?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Great, okay. So I just want to talk a little bit about my education. So I'm from the United States. I'm from specifically the state Texas, Tejas, as people say in Kazakhstan. And in 2013, I graduated high school in Texas. And then I moved to Hawaii to do my bachelor's degree in something called second language studies. So the name is confusing. The name second language studies sounds like I learned two languages. But that's not it. It means I learned how people learn second or third, fourth languages and how to teach second languages. So I got my bachelor's degree, my undergraduate degree in 2016. And then I got a master's degree in the same thing. I finished that in 2018. And then in August 2018, I came here. So directly after graduating, I came here, and during this time, I learned my third language. So in high school, I learned American Sign Language, which is the language that deaf people use. So sign language, it's the language for the deaf. So it's not spoken, it's for deaf people here. So that was my second language, I guess you could say. And I learned that for 4 years in high school. And then when I moved to Hawaii, I started learning Korean. And I learned Korean during my bachelor's degree and my master's degree. I learned it, I guess, 5 years in total. And there were 2 summers that I went to Korea. I went to Korea twice, one summer and then the next summer, to learn Korean more. So that would be my third language. And then when I came to Kazakhstan, I started learning Russian. I learned Russian for 6 months. And then I switched. I switched to Kazakh. So now I'm trying to learn Kazakh, but I'm still trying to learn. I'm not fluent yet, but my Korean is much better. So that's a little bit about my education. I also, there we go. I just also have some pictures of when I was traveling. This is traveling abroad, like in Japan, Thailand, Hawaii, Taiwan, Azerbaijan. And I've also traveled quite a bit in Kazakhstan, the Pink Lake, Taraz, Shymkent, Almaty, Turkestan recently, Burabai. So I've been around Kazakhstan as well. I don't know if these parts are interesting, but I figured I'd just talk about myself a little bit. And let's go ahead and move into my ideas about language learning. So as people might know, there are 4 skills. This is the easiest way to break down different pieces of language learning. I think everybody is familiar with these items here: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. You may even have classes that might focus on one thing. For example, when you at NUFIP, in our program at NU, the foundation year program, we have a reading and writing class and a listening and speaking class. So we like to split those so we can focus on them in general. And so my first piece of advice regarding these 4 skills is that when you're learning any language, it doesn't matter which one, you should identify which 4 of these skills are you weak in, and which skills are necessary for you in particular. So when you enter university, writing is a particularly important skill because you're going to be writing a lot of papers. And if you're weak in writing, that might be something that you want to focus on. So sometimes when we're learning a language, we might just think about when we're learning vocabulary or just trying to speak to somebody. But the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to divide these up, figure out which ones you need to work on, and focus on those a little bit more than normal. So for example, for my Kazakh, my speaking and listening, those 2, are worse than my reading and writing, because usually I study Kazakh by myself, and it's much easier to read and write by yourself. It's hard to speak by yourself. So my listening and speaking are lower. So when I study, I should do more practice with listening and speaking for my Kazakh. How I might do this is, for listening, try to find those Kazakh TV dramas, right? And listen and watch those. For speaking, maybe when I catch a taxi here, I can talk to the taxi driver. Or let's talk about my Korean. I don't have many Korean speaker friends here, so I might go onto the internet to find people to speak with, like in a Discord server, or I might find some type of speaking club online to increase my speaking skills for Korean, since I'm not in the Korean environment, right? Here in Kazakhstan, not that many people speak Korean. So to kind of talk about the 4 skills one more time. Look at them separately to identify which ones are the weakest for you, to study those a little bit more. Additionally, if you don't know where to start to study, if you identify these 4 skills, you can say, well, today I'm going to focus on writing. So I'm going to write in a journal, or I'm going to write my Telegram blog in English today. And then tomorrow I'll work on my reading. So I'll read the news, or I'll read a fan fiction. I don't know, something that's entertaining. And then the next day you could focus on listening or speaking. So it's easy to break down those different parts, because when we look at learning a language, it might seem challenging because there's so much we need to improve on. But if we break it up, it gets a little bit easier, a little bit more manageable. Instead of eating a whole cake, we can cut it into slices and focus on one slice of cake at a time. So that's the first part, 4 skills, and looking at the 4 skills individually. A lot of people also feel like they don't have the vocabulary to produce language. So when I talk about language production, producing language, that's speaking and writing. So we feel we need to learn vocabulary. Vocabulary, to me personally, I think is very important. So I want to cover that a little bit here. I personally use, let me see if I can. Yes, I can. I can talk to anybody. I'll write in the chat. I personally use Quizlet, Quizlet.com. I think everybody is aware of Quizlet, but this website is where you can make flashcard vocabulary cards for anything. But this is only the first step of using or learning vocabulary. So we make a little flashcard set. I have flashcards for a lot of things. Let me try to show my profile on this screen. I'm not sure if I can. But I have flashcards. Yeah, you can see it. No, you can't. I have flashcards from years and years ago, starting I think in 2014, of just learning vocabulary. So I try to study these when I have free time. For example, when I'm waiting for the bus, when I'm waiting for my Zoom class to start, I'm already sitting down at the computer, just waiting for the class to go through those flashcards. And what's good about Quizlet is they some games you can play, like matching. I also have on the computer an asteroid type of game. But that way, in my free time, just for a short amount of time, not extensively long, I just go through my flashcards. That's the first step, kind of trying to memorize them, but also not feeling bad if I forget some things. And then I try to use that vocabulary. So that's the second and third part right here. So what is easiest for me personally is writing them. I find that writing practice my foreign language is easy for me. Well, not easy it's not easy like the language is easy, but it's simple because all I have to do is sit down and write. You know, I can do it at my own home in my own time. So the first thing I might do is look at my vocabulary and then think of an interesting situation where I might use it and write a sentence with that word. Now, that's, I think, very obvious. Many people know that tool to write one sentence with the word that you use it. So that's one option. Another option in journaling is just to write about anything and then try to use the words that you're learning, not writing one sentence per word that you're learning, but writing a full narrative, a full story. Sorry, my cat is in the way. She will bother us probably more than once today. She loves to show herself when I'm on camera. So I apologize. Will you say hello? So not only do we practice it line by line, one word at a time, we also try to build a narrative, build a story, or build a journal entry, including those words. They don't have to be in every sentence, but it might be more enjoyable to write about a topic in general and include that vocabulary. And this might be good if the vocabulary in your flashcard set has a topic. Oftentimes we learn English through specific topics, like going to the store or outer space or biology. I'm not sure exactly. So if we think about the topic in general and write, that might be good. Additionally, when making a vocabulary list, so I want to go back to the flashcards one more time because I just remembered something. When we look at flashcards, you should have no more than 20 words per flashcard set. I'll write that in the chat too. Sometimes we find or we have to learn a lot of words, but if we put that all in one set, then it's more difficult for us to memorize them. Ideally, we should probably only try to memorize 10 words, but the maximum is 20. More than 20, and we'll start to forget. So don't try to push yourself to learn so much vocabulary. So we've covered the first two here. We have the flashcards, then we try to use them in writing. And the third part is, I think, the most difficult, trying to remember that vocabulary when we speak. Even I forget to use those words that I'm learning in Kazakh in real life. But if we actively choose one word from our list and try to use it when you speak, the next time you speak, don't try to use all 20 words in your list, but just choose one special word, especially if it's one that might be more difficult for you, one that you can't remember. Write it on your hand. Write it on a sticky note. What's it? Do I have a sticky note here? Write it on one of these. Put it on your wall. Put it where you see it. And then the next time you try to speak that language, try to use that word. Just focus on one word at a time. The most difficult or the most interesting word for spoken practice. And then what's I think most important for long-term language learning is to review those older lists. So when we use one memorization tool for a long time, Quizlet, Memrise, Anki, any flashcard tool that you have, when we keep building more and more lists within the flashcard sets, then we need to review those older lists. So I don't know if you can tell, I'll try to show you from mine. I have this is one set, so like a bunch of lists together. And all of those are different sets. So I scroll down to the very bottom, the ones that I've practiced furthest in the past, longest ago. And I'll just go through and play a game with them or quickly review them. When we want to put something in our long-term memory, sometimes we may remember something for a few weeks. I think everybody who has learned a language for class or for school has probably memorized a bunch of words for the quiz. And then after the quiz, you forget all the words. So what's important is that after 2 weeks, you go back and you look at that list again, review those older lists again. You don't have to review an old list every day. Just when you remember, because in total, language is about using it. There's a phrase in English, a phrase that my family and a lot of Americans love. I think the phrase, use it, yes. The phrase is use it or lose it. And this is very applicable to languages. If you don't use it, you lose it. If I don't use Korean, I lose Korean. Here, I never use American Sign Language, the language for the deaf, and I'm losing it. So even if reviewing older flashcard lists and looking at flashcards isn't using it in the sense that we speak it or we write it, as in these two, it's still putting it in our brain. The more we think about it, the more it becomes, what's the word? I guess I could say engraved in our brains. So this is specifically about vocabulary. Repeating vocabulary is one of the most important things. You use it or lose it. Where is my, there we go. I also want to talk about some general tips. When people, specifically, my first one is specifically about watching videos. If you're learning English, one of the easiest ways, I think, to have access to English is just to look on YouTube, because there's a lot of English content. Or watching movies, watching TV shows. There's a lot out there. British, American, Australian, New Zealand TV shows, movies. Oh, South African. There's a lot of English speaking content out there. And sometimes it can be challenging, especially for English, because of all those accents or the speed at which people speak. So people speak fast with an accent. And they're usually speaking for other native speakers. So sometimes we use subtitles. And if you could maybe understand 70% of the video with your native language's subtitles. Let's say we're Russian speakers here. If we watch an English movie with Russian subtitles, and you can, while you're listening, you think, I can understand 70%, switch the subtitles to English. Because if you can understand about 70%, with reading the words, it will be helpful. So for example, when I learned Korean, I never use, or when I watch Korean dramas or Korean content on the internet, like Korean content on YouTube, I click on the Korean subtitles, not the English subtitles, because the English subtitles don't help me. They're kind of like when you learn to ride a bicycle and there's those wheels that help you in the back. Eventually, those wheels in the back, the two side wheels, don't help you anymore. They actually stop you from learning how to ride the bike fully. So switching to English subtitles is one of the things I would suggest. And if you're watching this presentation and you're understanding me now, I think English subtitles would work for you. Moving on to the second bullet point here. I think this is the biggest piece of advice I would give. This is what I tell people all the time. Because I'm an English teacher, people ask me, what should I do to learn a language? What should I do to learn English? You should get as much input as possible. This is the most important thing. And by input, I mean things going into your ears, into your eyes. So you're surrounded by English content if you're learning English. When I was learning Korean, I listened to Korean music. Maybe 90% of the music I listened to was Korean music. I'm about to sneeze. I apologize. Woo! Sorry. I also watched, most of the TV shows I watched were Korean TV shows, like dramas or variety shows. I also online would read some webtoons. So when I was reading comics, I guess you could say manga or manhwa, but in Korean. So I was getting a bunch of, even though I didn't live in Korea, I was trying to receive a lot of media in my target language, which was Korean, in the language I wanted to learn. So often when we're learning a language in our home country, we don't have access. We can't freely talk to people in the language we're learning, right? If you're here in Kazakhstan trying to learn Korean, I can't just walk outside and speak to people in Korean. So I have to find that input from other places, right? For me learning Kazakh, I can walk outside and talk to somebody. But otherwise, we need to surround ourselves in the language virtually. And we should try to use the language as well. So we have that input surrounding us, reading things, listening to things, watching things in our target language more than the languages we already know. If you can, get your news in your target language, the language you want to learn. For example, if you're learning English, there are several newspapers in Kazakhstan, maybe several is a lie, maybe one or two newspapers that talk about Kazakh news in English. They write about it in English. You could use that as a reading input about your own country, right? Or as I said before, watching things on YouTube, getting your resources online. We're already using the internet a lot, so try to get a lot of input. The second part is practicing, which can be, as I said, difficult when we're not surrounded by the language in our country or in the place we live, right? So I would suggest trying to find online spaces to practice with people. I think people here are very familiar, young people these days are very, very familiar with Discord. It's an online platform where you can chat or talk to people. Actually, if you type on Discord, English practice or English speaking, English, learning English, there are Discord servers, that's the word, servers focused on that, where you can talk to people. Now be careful, of course, when you're online, don't reveal random information, personal information to other people, but you can still try to practice. I was talking with a Kazakh friend. We met online, actually. We talked through Discord. And she said she mostly learned how to speak English from talking with people from the UK, the United Kingdom, on Discord, which I thought was very interesting. Additionally, I'm sure you all are in class. You have classmates or friends who are also learning English or interested in a language that you're learning. I think maybe one or two people might actually be interested in learning Korean. I'm sure there's other people, your friends, who might be interested in that as well. So you can try, it's difficult, but you can ask them, hey, can we just speak in English for 5 minutes? Or when I was in university, I would talk to a friend. My friend also spoke English. We were both English speakers, both from the US. And I said, let's speak in Korean while we walk home. And even though it's difficult for both of us, because we both were not good at Korean, if we promised each other, we said to each other, we're both learning Korean, So let's practice together just for a short time, just as we're walking home. Then you have that practice. And it's okay if it's you're practicing with someone who is also learning, because I think sometimes when we practice with people who are also learning, it's easier to communicate with them because they are at your level. They understand the way you speak, that target language, the language you want to learn as well. I love talking in Kazakh with people who are also learning Kazakh because we understand each other more than when I'm talking to talking to the pharmacist or a doctor, in Kazakh. So try to ask your friends. And additionally, maybe you just you're very scared of that immediate speaking with somebody, chatting verbally with your friends or on Discord can be scary because you have to answer immediately. You can also just leave comments on social media. Leave comments on YouTube, leave comments on Instagram, leave comments on TikTok to practice your English in a little way. Don't forget about using English on social media as well, because we're on it all the time. I assume many of you have some type of social media account. You can find ways to use it there as well. And lastly, I just have, my goodness, every time I try to change the slide, it never wants to change. Here we go. I have 3 links here that I can also add in the chat of some tools if you don't know them already. Didn't want to show you that slide. Once I finish sharing the screen, I can send these through the chat. But these are just 3 tools that I think might be helpful if your English is a bit lower. BBC, so this is British, they have these short drama episodes. Some are interesting, some are not, but it's little pieces of English that you can just watch very quickly, and it has the script with it, what they say. Additionally, they have BBC 6-minute English, which is like a podcast. And I think podcasts are very useful because you can just listen while you're doing other things. While you're walking to school, while you're cleaning your room, you can listen to something. And additionally, this website here, allandE.com, has some graded readers, which means short books that are easier to read. And it also has a podcast for that as well. This last one, I participate in creating it, so I'm biased, but the other 2 are BBC, normal ones. And I think this concludes my presentation. I'll go ahead and stop sharing. But I hope you've learned a few tools, or at least had a refresher on what you might have already known about learning a new language. And I think we can now move on to a Q&A section, if I'm not incorrect.
Yes, we can start Q&A session. So
Sure.
There are basic rules. Raquel will ask very small, simple questions. And the first one who will up the hand and answer correctly will get a new branded product. The first one is a backpack, a new backpack.
Would you like me to answer? I mean, me to ask the questions?
You can, yeah.
Or you? Me or you?
You. Tell the question.
All right. Sure. Okay. So is it the first person to raise their hand or the first person to write it in the chat?
First person to raise the hand and answer correctly.
Okay. So we're having somebody raise their hand. All right, Kanat is gonna watch who raises their hand, and then I'll ask the question first. Okay. So
No questions yet.
yeah, I have the question now. I recommended one resource to make flashcards. What was the resource to make flashcards?
Fariza Asılbek.
Ooh.
Hi there. Hi.
Hello, go
We
ahead.
can hear you.
Okay. It's Quizlet.com.
Oh, yeah, that's correct.
Отлично. Фариза,
Thank
можете
you. Good job.
написать свой email? Мы с вами свяжемся.
Хорошо.
Спасибо.
Спасибо.
All right, so that was our first question. Second question. I'm looking at my own PowerPoint to prepare it. Who can name the 4 skills that I mentioned? The 4 skills.
Так, Maze ZD. Maze. Так, мы тогда передаем слово другому. Бауржан Турижанов. Бауржан.
Well, somebody answered in the chat already.
Okay, but
Sorry,
it's not fair. Given.
Bogdan?
Can you hear?
Yes.
Answer is listening, reading, writing, speaking.
That's correct. Yes.
Не отвечайте в чат-боксе. Нужно, мы дадим слово, и вы ответите онлайн. Так не будет считаться это.
Right. So moving forward. Okay. Lower your hands. We got the answer. Yes. So everyone lower their hands. You have to raise your hand instead of writing in the chat. There's a raise hand function at the bottom of Zoom. Ooh, my internet. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I thought my Zoom went out for a second. Okay. Next question. There was one thing that I said is probably the most important part of my presentation. What was the most important thing to remember to do? I think this is a difficult question.
Jean Toria.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think the most important thing was to surround yourself with the language surroundings.
Ooh, correct. Yes. Good. Yes.
Jean Toria, вы получите от нас флешку, если что. Я забыл сказать, что каждый вопрос — это разные продукции. Первый был рюкзак, второй был эко-пакет, третья флешка, следующая будет термокружка.
Хорошо, спасибо.
Угу.
Thank you.
Можете написать свои имейлы, кто ответил?
Да, конечно.
Спасибо. Okay, we have two more questions.
Two more? Did you say you forgot to tell the prize?
Yeah. So the second one is the thermo cup.
Okay. The second to last question. What is one of the resources I put on that last slide?
Анар? Анар Сарсенова.
Yes, yes, I'm here. It was BBC resources.
Yes, there were two of them. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there's
I'm glad.
не читает, не смотрит.
yeah, there's BBC
Почему?
English dramas and BBC
Ah,
6 Minutes
BBC.
English.
Yes, and I wrote in the chat, they are great resources.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you very much.
Напишите, пожалуйста, свою почту.
Спасибо, спасибо, Канат. Огромное спасибо.
У нас последний вопрос. Последний вопрос. Мы будем разыгрывать кружку от Назарбаев университета. The last question,
All right.
a new cup.
Sorry, go ahead. And our last question. I'm checking my slides one more time. I'll ask a question about myself then. Because I mentioned it at the very beginning. What languages do I know? You can say there's 4.
I am.
Yes, good evening. I'm happy to have the opportunity. Yes, languages, you know, they are Korean and English, and the English in for people who can't speak or hear, and Kazakh language. And
Yeah.
you also studied Russian for 6 months, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
you listened very well.
I know you are a YouTuber also. I have been watching your videos for 2 or 3 years. I'm was surprised because of you. Thank you for today's webinar. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, famous.
Yeah, I'm not that famous, but thank you for watching my videos, by the way, for so long. But yes, correct. That's correct. And I think that's all of our questions there. I thought the last one was just about me, but thank you for listening anyways to that part. Should we, are there any other questions? Are they allowed to ask any other questions, or like,
Yes,
are
we
they
have already
supposed to
finished.
ask any questions?
So if you have questions, you can tell the questions to Raquel based on her webinar. Just raise your hands and we will let you speak.
Sure, you don't have to feel like you have to ask a question, but if you want to.
Yep.